the latest iPad lineup, minus the Pro third generation 11 inch, but I do have the big one. Hey y'all, A0 here. I'm gonna go over the iPads in the current lineup from the ninth generation iPad to the 12.9-inch iPad Pro. The iPad I'm missing here is the 11-inch iPad Pro for this generation, because I opted for the larger 12.9-inch iPad Pro, which has some extras even above that one. So we'll discuss all of that here in this video, so let's get to it. So first iPad on the list, the ninth generation iPad, the OG, the first iPad that started it all, but in its ninth iteration now. Still using the old school design. Some people don't like that, including myself. I prefer the new design. Not gonna say I don't, but it's not a bad design. And one huge advantage of it is the Touch ID. Actually, for me, the Touch ID button is still built into the home button here, and it is so much better and easier to press than going up to press the power button here on the iPad Air and the iPad Mini, but we'll get back into that when I get to those iPads. But that's one of the strengths to me of this iPad is the Touch ID being here, being a bigger button, having bigger hands. It's easier to reach, easier to get to than on the other iPads with Touch ID. So yeah, it's pretty, you know, good iPad. Screen quality is good, not great. Um, the iPad does everything that iPads can do pretty much. Not fully, and I'll get into that on the later iPads, but it can do quite a bit. And with the new A13 Bionic chip in it, well, not new, the chip is older now. It's actually from the iPhone 11 range, but it's still a very powerful chip to this day in 2022. That's very capable, and this iPad gets to multitask. It only has 3 gigabytes of RAM compared to the others having 4 to 8 to 16 if you max out the Pro models. So it's still a very capable device. It's great for kids. It's great for people that have a budget, a low budget. It's only $329 brand new, and there's constantly deals to get it lower. I just saw on Walmart.com it's $299 right now. Just looking around. So yeah, it's a great entry price to iPad if you never had one, if you want one, um, and or if you just don't have the budget for iPad Pro. Um, and some of the other things about it, the speaker grills. So the speaker grills are here on the bottom, along with the Lightning connector, and they're only on the bottom here. So that's one problem. You don't get stereo surround sound when you have it in landscape mode because it's only on one side. It does have two speakers like the iPad Air and Mini, so it still has decent sound. It just comes out on one side, so it kind of sounds like mono-ish. Then there's the Lightning connector there that isn't. It's the only iPad with Lightning still, so that there lets you know how, as much of a disadvantage that is. It doesn't allow it to use the Apple Pencil 2. It still uses Apple Pencil 1. Because if it went to USB, they would be forced to upgrade to Apple Pencil 2, since there's no Lightning port on that design. And it's a great port for. I don't think it's that bad at charging as a lot of people say, but for data transfer, it definitely isn't the best. Another positive about the iPad ninth generation is that it's the only current gen iPad that still has a headphone jack, which is important to some people. Next, we have the iPad Mini, smaller than the iPad. The iPad has a 10.2-inch screen. The iPad Mini here has an 8.3-inch screen, which is bigger than all the previous minis, which were 7.9 inches. So they did upgrade the size with the design change because this sixth generation iPad mini is the first to have the updated design. So with that, it's also added the capability to use the Apple Pencil, which magnetically attaches to the side here. So because of that, and you can see it takes up pretty much the whole side. Actually put the volume buttons here at the top, so you can see those there, and power buttons there, which is the Touch ID button on this one, which is kind of what I alluded to earlier. On this one's not so bad as far as reach because it's small. You don't have to reach that far, but it's still a smaller button than you know the other one. So that's kind of annoying. So the Mini is a great iPad. I've fallen in love with this iPad because it's so compact, so light, and the first iPad I had was the iPad Air series, the first Air and the second Air. Um, and I had the second Air for a very long time, and I liked it because it was light. So when I moved to the iPad Pro, which is the one I got after the Air 2, then when I wasn't able to lift so much in bed and such, when I started having health problems, the Mini became a lot more attractive because it's so light. And I love to just be in bed watching YouTube or one of my streaming services that I subscribe to on this thing. It's so convenient for that kind of thing, to just jot down notes, to just, draw a picture real quick on Procreate and things of that nature. It's really nice. I like the screen quality. It's 60 hertz, but it doesn't really bug me as much as it would on a larger screen. But I know some people have spoken about this jelly scrolling issue. I haven't really noticed it myself, honestly. It's probably something that you have to kind of look for more than that just naturally happens from normal use. Because I typically haven't seen that, and I've used this Mini quite a bit since I bought it. It starts at $499, so about $500, but you can find deals all over the place. I even bought mines on sale uh, for a little over $400, and that was a while ago, like about a year ago now, not too long after it came out. So you find deals if you look for them. Yeah, it's so light, so thin. It's really amazing for that. How light and thin it is. It has the A15 Bionic chip in it, so it has the same chipset that the iPhone 13 Pros have with the upgraded GPU version. So it's a pretty powerful chip, and it's newer, of course, than the previous iPad I just featured, the 9th generation iPad using the A13. So it's going to be that much faster and more future-proof than the iPad. It's also lighter, and the screen is only a 1.9 difference in size, and this screen is laminated, so it's much nicer for like drawing and things of that nature versus the unlaminated screen of the iPad 9th generation. So that's a couple of things to think about. The biggest advantage the iPad has is its bigger screen, less cost, and it has a better Touch ID button. Because it has the latest mobile chip, it's going to be around for a long time. But if this trend of making updates specific to M1 devices for the iPad line continues, it could fall behind like all the other non-M1 iPads. But for now, the update that they're giving it isn't a game changer to the extent that this iPad is still not viable. If you use it for iPad things, and it still has 4 gigabytes of RAM, so it's still capable of multitasking very well, even better than the other iPad, the 9th generation one that is. So it's still a very good iPad, and I recommend it to anybody that wants, is budget conscious and wants a laminated screen iPad, because they're specifically doing something for art. It's great for that. It's very portable, so like for students and things of that nature, it won't take up much room in your backpack. Getting starts at 500, and then you could update the size. It comes with 64 gigabytes of memory, which all the iPads come with at least now. The Pros start at 128 gigabytes of storage, so that's one advantage for the Pros, but it's still a nice starting point. A lot of people are saying it's not enough for these years, and 2022 being that is, but I don't necessarily agree with that. It just depends on what you use your iPad for. If you have a specific task in mind for your iPad, then it's plenty enough memory to get those things done. But if you're doing a lot, you have pro workflows and you have a lot of content and things you work with, then 64 definitely isn't going to be enough. There are some nice things though, like iPads can access external storage drives now. The pros being better than the others because they have Thunderbolt ports, and they also because of that have faster transfer speeds. But I'll get to that when I get to the pros. But yeah, the mini's legit now. It even has USB-C. It's not the best USB-C. It's slower than the new iPad Airs, but it's still way better than Lightning. So yeah, it's a big upgrade over the last generation. It's one I recommend. This is the iPad Air, the fifth generation version of it. It's the latest iPad being released this year. It has the M1 chip and is the cheapest device with the M1 chip if you get this base model storage, which starts at $599. Great iPad. It's kind of similar to the iPad I just spoke about, the mini, but bigger, having a 10.9-inch screen. The screen is still 60 hertz, and the iPad mini actually has more pixels per inch on the screen, but um, outside of that, the Air screen is great. So don't think it's a bad screen. It's laminated, so it's great with the Apple Pencil and drawing, as well as the Mini. Better than the original iPad. It has a faster USB-C port than the Mini, getting 10 gigabits per second speeds versus 5. It's a great iPad. I love it. The Air is the first iPad I had. So and then I got the second generation Air, and then I stuck with that one for a long time. Um, I wanted the Pro mainly because of the speaker situation. The Airs before the fourth generation one, which was before this one, had the old design where they had the speaker grills on the bottom, like the iPad Air, or the iPad ninth generation currently does still. But this generation has speaker grills on both sides, so I like it a lot better for the sound, even though it still has two speakers. They're on each side, so you can get kind of sound on both sides when you have the landscape mode, same as the iPad mini. So definitely, that's one of the biggest things for me with the design change, is the speaker setup, more than even the look or anything like that. Because like I said, I actually like the home button. I don't mind having a home button. If they gave it, I don't know, this design with the home button, I would not mind that at all. But yeah, I really like having the speaker grills on both sides. It sounds fuller, even if it's still just two speakers. Of course, I would prefer having four like the Pro, which is one of the reasons I ultimately got a Pro. This being my first Pro model that I purchased, the M1 Pro that I'm gonna get to later. But the Air is a great iPad. If you want some of the benefits of the higher spec models without paying the price, getting the M1 is a big part of the Air. Is, like I said, the lowest cost to get an M1 device, lower than the Mac Mini or any other devices, although you can get the Mac Mini on sale, so maybe not. Anyways, and it's the unbinned version. It's the 8-core CPU, 8-core GPU on this and the iPad Pro, so that's really nice too. It's stronger than even the M1 Mac that I had, the MacBook Air, because it was an 8-core CPU and a 7-core GPU. So powerful machines. They have a great chip that's going to last for a very long time, so you won't have to upgrade for a long time with this one if you don't need to. Having only a 60 hertz screen, bugs a lot of people. So if you don't like that, then obviously the Pro is going to be the choices for you, one of the Pro models, because none of the other iPads have 120 hertz screens. So that's the one big disadvantage this one has. besides not having 4 speakers, it's a big disadvantage there for sound quality and fullness and loudness. Um, and then, of course, the big one is the mini LED, which is the biggest advantage as far as screen in the iPad world. So that's the Air Generation 5. The biggest in the lineup, the iPad Pro 12.9-inch, 5th generation. This is the one that costs the most, starting at $1,100 or $1,099, and it has the nicest screen, 120 hertz refresh rate, plus it's the mini LED, which is the only model that has it, even over the 11-inch iPad Pro. So it's a huge advantage if you game or if you watch HDR content. It's gonna make it look really nice. But outside of that, honestly, I kind of prefer OLED myself. I think it's a great screen, especially for the iPad lineup, and they implement it well. But I just prefer OLED myself, so I like to use my OLED Samsung Galaxy S8 Ultra to watch content myself. And if you want to compare us a video of that, let me know in the comments. I haven't really made a video about that one yet. But anyways, the iPad Pro 12.9-inch is a great iPad. It's big. It uses the Apple Pencil 2, which is the latest generation iPad Apple Pencil. It's a really good iPad for a lot of different things. One thing that a lot of people don't talk about is the iPad Pros are the only iPads that have LiDAR scanners on them, which come in handy if you need to scan things. With this, you can actually scan spaces in rooms and things of that nature, more so than documents. So, but even with that, you get a more accurate picture because it helps particularly at night, and also has a flash, which the iPad Air and the original iPad do not for some reason. But outside of that, it's really good for a few other reasons too. The 4 speakers I mentioned before, the sound is great on this iPad. I kind of use it as a little boombox a lot of times because it sounds really great, and it gets pretty loud for how thin and small it is and easy to carry around. So yeah, I really like that. I like the ProMotion. Um, you know, to me, ProMotion is not a must-have. A lot of people put a lot of value into that. The 120 hertz refresh rates. It is nice for gaming, but I don't game it so much on tablets and other devices. I mean, it's nice because if I decide to, great. Like do a streaming service kind of gaming thing, or just actually play more mobile games. But for a time being, it's not a huge use for me. Um, Outside of occasionally when I watch videos on it or something. But it does make it look good and feel snappier. I do agree with all that. A lot of people say it is nice for drawing. It's less delay when you're drawing. Of course, most of the time it's not noticeable on even the iPad Air Mini or even the original iPad is still pretty good for drawing. It's just the laminated screen or unlaminated screen rather. Makes it so that the pen looks separate from the screen that you're writing on versus the other iPads. But sound wise and screen quality wise, this is the king right here, even over the 11-inch. So that's why I didn't really get the 11-inch. To me, that's kind of the iPad that, unless you really put value into that 120 hertz, you don't really, it's the least recommended one for me. Because this iPad is bigger and better than it in pretty much every way. It's nice just to get a Pro iPad with that one because you do get the 120 hertz and you also get the LiDAR scanner, which I think is even more useful than ProMotion in a lot of ways. But again, you can get most of that on the Air and save a lot of money. So that's something to consider. I know now that it has the M1 on the Air, that was a huge deal because now, to me, it's direct competition. It's only zero point 0.1 inches less than the 11-inch iPad Pro. It doesn't have four speakers; it only has two, and the iPad Pro 11-inch does get the four speakers, does get the LiDAR. So those are two things because I love music, and so I like having the speaker quality. So that's a big deal to me. Even over the screen, the screens on the Air and the 11-inch Pro are nearly the same. Besides the Pro Motion, they're pretty much the same. The True Tone camera in the front, you get the animojis and memojis, which are kind of cool to use sometimes. And you do get Face ID, so that's another big thing. I think the pandemic showed a lot of people with Face ID is kind of not good in a lot of situations, but I mean, to me, it's not a big deal whether it's finger or Face ID. I still use my fingerprint on the MacBook M2 Air I have, so I'm used to that. And a lot of other devices still use touch to log in, so I'm used to that. I don't mind using that. Face ID is kind of nice, on the iPhone in particular, since it's smaller. You can move your mouse real quick and put it to your face. But on the iPads, I don't really mind having it either ways. I wish they had both options on this iPad. That's one thing that's kind of a negative on it is, Samsung devices have their version of Face ID plus, Touch ID. Even though their Face ID is not as good as Apple's, it's still nice that they have both options. So, Apple should definitely do that on the Pro models. It shouldn't lose a feature. And one that some people might prefer, like myself with Touch, and especially if they can do it like under the screen or something like that versus that thinner power button, or just put the home button back or something like that. But outside of that, it's the best iPad you can buy, but it's going to cost you. So you just got to really ask yourself: do you need all the features of this? Do you need LiDAR? Do you need four speakers? Things of that nature. Do you need 5G? That's something I didn't even go over. All the iPads except for the original iPad have 5G, but the Pro models, both the 11 and 12.9-inch models, get the millimeter wave 5G. So they have 5G that works on both types of 5G, the faster but shorter distance 5G and the larger range 5G that's slower but still better than 4G. So that's great because the original iPad only gets 4G LTE still. And that's another thing about the original iPad. Supposedly, it's getting a big upgrade for the 10th version, according to rumors. I don't really do rumors, and I don't really put too much into the rumors until there's definitive proof or whatever. But if they do upgrade the iPad to a new design and to USB-C in particular, which is something a lot of people do want, and it definitely needs to be on the iPad just for adding external devices. It'd be very helpful in that regard for a lot of schools and things of that nature that use the iPad. As far as everything else, I'm not really concerned about it because if they do really change it as much as some of these rumors are saying to make it like more like the iPad Air, then it's going to raise the cost too. And that's one of the really nice strengths of the iPad is that it's $329 still, which is a very good price for how powerful a product it is. I mean, the A13 chip is still no slouch. It could do a lot of things for schooling and things of that nature. That's really helpful to students. So, you know, they definitely need to make sure to keep the cost down if they do make major changes to the original iPad line in the 10th iteration. They do release iPads every year compared to the other ones, which come out every so often. Sometimes the mini is the hardest one to really know because they kind of are all over the place with the mini. The Air seems to be kind of on a 2-year timeline right now, and the Pros are usually a year and a half to 2 years. So you can go either way with those. So, in conclusion, basically, choose the iPad that meets your needs. Don't overdo it just because you want a pro model or anything like that. You know, just do it if you have, the need for it. LiDAR, the better screen, it does help with, color correction and things of that nature for photos and video. So that is one good thing about it. Having a better screen quality, things of that nature, gaming, things of that. So if you're using it for that kind of stuff. But outside of that, all these are great products. And they're the products that really got me into Apple. Thanks for watching and have a great day, everyone.